You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. We are here once again, and today we have another show lined up for y'all. Today we're going to have a special guest. We're going to talk to Rick Heyland. He is the author of this amazing new book that has been out recently, and it's called Live Your Purpose, a step-by-step guide on how to live your best life. He also is the owner of ciforlife.org. And man, first and foremost, I just want to say thank you, Rick, taking time out of your schedule talking to us today. But how are you doing, man?
Good, Shamaya. Thanks so much for having me on your show, and thanks for doing this great work, and looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, sir, for being on here. And like I said moments ago, the website ciforlife.org stands for Continuous Improvement for Life. First and foremost, kind of tell us a little bit of your background and also what inspired you to do the work that you do today.
Great question. So background is I am semi-retired for 32 years. I joined and then ran a consulting company and got tired of the travel and decided that it was time to stay home a little bit. This was right before COVID. And since then, I've written 2 books and doing some online coaching and got a podcast and doing some different things, but virtually and online, enjoying the heck out of it. I am the father of, Cheryl and I are parents of 6 kids and 15 grandkids. We live in Salt Lake City, Utah, originally from Canada. I did my undergrad in business, my MBA in business, and enjoyed my consulting career terrifically, but got, as I mentioned, tired of the travel and really enjoying these last few years helping entrepreneurs and people live their best life, scale their business, improve, all that kind of fun stuff. So yeah, as you mentioned, Shamaya, my business is continuous improvement for life. And so it's either personal development or business improvement. Those are the 2 things that give me a lot of energy, a lot of inspiration. Where do I get the inspiration from? That's a great question. It's a bit of a story, but I think it ties nicely into something your listeners want to hear, and it certainly ties into Live Your Purpose. When I was 26 years old, I was doing an MBA program. I just moved my family across country. It was Cheryl and I and our 2 oldest kids. They were young. We moved away from everything. I moved in, got in this MBA program. I was the youngest and least experienced. I was nervous. I knew I had to work hard. We'd uprooted the family and all that, the insecurities and anxieties that go with, a big move like that and big decision, life decision. And so I was working my tail off. We were about 6-7 weeks in, got a first big test back in economics from Don C. And I was one of the lowest grades in the class. And I was bummed. I had a pity party on the Friday night. I told Cheryl on Saturday I was going down to our unfinished townhouse near the university place. And I was going to do some soul searching and figure out what I should do with my life. And I remember one of my heroes was Stephen R. Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he talked about begin with the end in mind and mission statements and purpose statements. And so I thought, I got nothing to lose. I've known this, I had read this and loved this book for probably 5 or 6 years at this point. But now I was in a bit of a mini crisis and desperation to try to figure out, am I supposed to be moved my family all across the country? Am I supposed to be doing this? What's the plan here? And I lost a little bit of confidence. And so I went down and I started this process of beginning with the end in mind. And I asked myself 2 questions. One, what are my strengths and how do I want to share those with the world going forward? Kind of visioning based on strengths. And the second question that was very helpful that I highly recommend to people is I'm at my funeral. I'm able to view and hear what people are saying. You can't control what people say, but if you can envision what you want them to say, let's write that down and reverse engineer it back to, our daily, weekly, monthly goals and activities. So with those 2 questions, I came up with a very draft purpose statement that it was about continuous improvement, action orientation. I used the word continuous improvement in action orientation, helping people live their best life, those kind of languages. So I didn't think much about it, but I went back to university, went back to school. I did a little bit better. No one would confuse me for the valedictorian by any stretch of the imagination, but I did better. Then it came to job search time a year and a bit later, and I was looking for the job, and nothing looked good. And the couple that I did interview, I went nada, I went nuts. It wasn't going anywhere. And I didn't panic or anything, but I was wondering, what the heck? And I didn't really tie it into my purpose statement yet, but I saw an ad, and not a word of a lie, some of the very words that were in my purpose statement were in this ad for a small niche consulting company out of Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, that's doing continuous improvement, action orientation, doing consulting where most consulting groups take off. We stay on, help the people improve their business, change lives, et cetera, et cetera. So I thought, oh my goodness. I went home and told Cheryl, this is it. This is my job. This is like almost the same words from my purpose statement. So I went, applied for the job. Long story short, a week later, the job postings were up. And remember, this is before computers, and it was all on the wall, and you had to go in the room and put your finger on the wall and see if and I didn't get the interview. So I thought, wow, this is weird. So I called them up, and they said, and they tease me to this day, 30 years later, they said, I'm not sure I was this bold, but they said, well, this is Rick Heyland. I applied for your job. And I think you made a mistake. I'm not on the listing for interview. So the lady was intrigued. Sandy was intrigued. She says, oh, okay, well, let me check. So she pulls up my resume. She looks at the list. She looks at the interviews. She says, oh, Mr. Heyland, you're one of the least experienced. And so I had nothing to lose. So basically, I told her about my purpose statement. And I said, these exact same words. This is what I was built for. This is who I want to be, blah, blah, blah. She said, okay, young fella, write your name on the wall for 5:00 on the Thursday. You'll be our last interview before they have to fly out. So I thought, okay, this is great. Long story short, I was the only one to get the job. I retired 32 years later as the COO and the second largest shareholder. And it was still full of ups and downs and stress and fun and challenge. But it was extremely successful and fun. In fact, the last book I wrote this last one was about Truth About Being a Rainmaker, 7 Steps for Sales Excellence. It's actually the story about how we 100x that consulting company over a 10-year period. So yeah, but it all started with purpose and articulating that vision for my life. And then I was attracted to something that helped fulfill that. And so first thing I wanted to do when I retired, I'm not a great writer. I'm more of a presenter, speaker, coach. But I knew there's guru.com and many, contract support that could help me. So I put down my ideas for this purpose. And as I'm writing this book, Live Your Purpose, step-by-step guide to living your best life, I'm doing research on the value of purpose. I knew that there was benefit, but when I'm looking at all the research, and I highlighted in chapter 3 of the book, but 10 physical health benefits for living on purpose, living your life on purpose. I knew the work benefits, I knew the focus benefits, I knew the prioritization benefits, but all these other benefits. And now McKinsey's coming up with some cool articles about purpose at work, and that when people feel a purpose at work, they're 6.5 times more resilient to overcome. And that was certainly my experience. And now, all the research proves it out. So that was kind of very eye-opening for me that there's all this research now backing the value of living with purpose. But so to answer your question, that's what inspires me, is living on purpose.
Once again, listen to Refocus Radio, talking to our guest, Rick Heyland, and the author of this book that we are going to talk a little bit more about, Live Your Purpose, a step-by-step guide on how to live your best life. When you made that decision that this is what I'm going for, you were on your target, you knew what you wanted to do, and that's what you went for. And like you said, you end up doing pretty nicely. And that's just an understatement. But just to summarize what I just heard from you, yep. You benefit from that commitment that you made that decision way back when. So I'm listening right now, and we have so many resources for Instagram posts and motivational posts and graphic posts. It's just so many cliches out there, if you will. But for you, you made it a true reality. You have a successful path of life and a great career. You are semi-retired, as you said. But someone who's listening, they're like, well, what about the struggles, though? What did you do when things weren't clicking, when things, because we all have dark times in our life.
Yep,
but
yep.
it's one thing to have the list of awards, but it's another thing to have a story behind those. For you, what was your way of overcoming the dark times as you were trying to be successful?
Yeah, I think there's two ways to answer that. It's a very good question because you're right. We all have ups and downs. I don't care. Think of the most successful person, the best looking, the best athlete, whatever it is, the CEO of your favorite company. We all have ups and downs. So that's a great question. How do you stay inspired, stay motivated to your path? And, for 32 years, I did implementation or execution consulting, meaning going into companies and showing them how to execute on their plans. Big box consulting came in and said, oh, you should be doing this strategy. You should be going into these markets. You should have these number of employees. You should blah, blah, blah. What we went in and did is help them. Okay, so I got a goal to double my revenue on this business. How do I do it? I got a goal to improve my productivity by 20%. How? And so that's kind of where I specialize. And so that's what the book is kind of, the first couple chapters talk about the importance of purpose, how to develop a purpose statement. And I gave you the top 2 questions right there that people can do right today. And then the second middle part of it is, okay, so I have this vision for my life. That's great. I've declared it and I'm going to seek for it. But how do I really execute in it? How do I engineer back and execute? So, and I actually have a planner on Amazon as well called Live Your Best Life Planner. And it has all these steps that I'm talking about. So after the purpose, I laid out 90-day goals for my life. One of the things I didn't want to do is be one of those rich, successful, unhappy. So for some reason, I felt inspired that I want to be successful and happy because I'd seen a lot of people with money that are very unhappy and not satisfied with life and estranged from their family, etc. So in this how to stay inspired or how to live your life, the middle part of the book really talks about how to set 90-day goals, how to set them well balanced and rounded, not just at work, but physical, spiritual, emotional, etc. And then how to put that into a weekly plan and then how to daily plan and prioritize. And I love that. That just gives me so much juice to think about an execution how. So that whether I'm feeling good or bad, I've got a plan, a process, and I just work it, right? My daily plan, my weekly plan said this. I have a date with my daughter on Friday night, and this is important to her. I'm exhausted from the long day, but it was the plan for the week, and she knows it. She's excited. I'm going to do it. My kids often ask me, Dad, you're so tired, exhausted, traveling, busy, stressed, blah, blah, blah. How did you keep your commitments to, and I just knew that was the priority, and I planned and executed on it, whether I was feeling great or not. So that's one answer to your question. Then the last part of the book, I got to my 40s and realized, you know what? I'm successful. I have money. I'm stressed out. How is that possible? I wanted to be rich and happy. How can I be so, I got 200 people I'm responsible for. Oh, there's a reason. I got a large family of 6 kids. They're getting older. I got teenagers. That might be. So how do I, and this is really where I get to the nut of your question. How do I both strive? There's a great, whether you're religious or not, or believe in the Bible or not, there's a great quote in Philippians 4, where I think it's Paul talking about, I'm responsible to be both full and happy, or full and hungry, he says. Full and hungry. How do you do both of those things at the same time? Well, I think if you study footnotes or follow that or believe, this is where I'm going, striving and content. That is where the space we want to find to be. And it is a balancing act and it takes work. So here I've got the striving piece figured out with goals and purpose. But how can you learn to be content? Because there's a lot of people striving that are not happy, that are saying, well, when I get my car, when I pay off my house, or when the kid's out of diapers, or when I make my first 100,000 or make my first million, or when I get promoted to this, then it'll be amazing. And then they get there and they realize there's something else amazing that their neighbor has or they want, and they're never happy. So how I manage the ups and downs is have a plan that leads to habits, and habits are non-willpower oriented. They're there. Like, I don't care. I had a bad night the night before and a contract canceled, but I wake up in the morning and do the same habits that get me on a positive, focused mindset. Pondering, prayer, exercise, etc. But then you can still have bad things happen and get discouraged. So how do you do that? And then the last couple chapters in the book are really talking about what I call stress management principles. How do you stay content? How do you stay focused? How do you stay present? I read a wonderful book in my 40s called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and it completely blew my mind. And why I knew it blew my mind is I didn't understand it the first time I went through it. I had to read it, listen to it 3 or 4 times, like it was so foreign to me. And he was preaching the content side, the power of now, the power of staying present, of not listening to your worried mind and staying present and focused on the now. And then I combined that with my skill set from my 20s of striving, purpose, goals. And I think that's not that, I've figured it out on actually living it perfectly, but that's the combination of having the skill set and the tools to stay present and content, to manage your way through ups and downs, and to have positive striving techniques, tools, and positive habits in your life. So that's how you manage the ups and downs. And first of all, that it's okay to have ups and downs, that it's okay to have a bad day. We all do. That's the first acknowledgement. Then to add some tools of meditation, pondering, stillness in your life so that you can focus on the now and focus on gratitude. One of the pages in my planner that's right beside the plan of the day and the prioritized plan of the day is daily gratitude and learnings. And that page is almost fuller than the plan for the day, because it's what am I grateful for? Focusing on the positive, focusing on what went right, not the gaps, right? As people, we're really good, especially when we have big dreams and goals, at focusing on what went wrong, and we're not at our goal yet. But yet happiness comes in focusing on the now and being grateful for what we have right now. So every day I start a gratitude list, every single stinking day, 7 days a week, 12 months a year, write a gratitude list. Why? For this very question that you asked. So I manage it through 1, acknowledging that it happens to everybody and that it's normal. 2, having skills like gratitude lists, like pondering, like meditation, like stillness. And then 3, by having a plan, I have positive habits in the day that if I wanted to quit, it would take something. Now I have people, well, I haven't started that. So how, it does take time to build that muscle memory so that it's not willpower anymore, because willpower is fleeting. Absolutely. And everybody, even the most motivated person, has wavering willpower. So build it into positive habits in your life through daily planning. And that's kind of my third technique. So it's really all 3 things combined to try to stay focused, successful, and happy and content.
Listen to Ivey Focus Radio talking to Rick Heyland and his book, Live Your Purpose, a step-by-step guide on how to live your best life. One word that stuck out is content. I really like that word. It's defined as a state of peaceful happiness. And happiness is defined as the state of being happy. But they're both a state of mind. And having that mindset of no matter what happens, by the end of the day, I have a lot of people on my show, and the common thread I get from it, people who are just very successful. I mean, people got millions to people who are just retired, whatever it is, retired military or professional. It's a common thread. And I hear it in what you're saying. And that is, even at the end of the day, if I don't hit the mark that I wanted, I'm still content, because I'll always be motivated to keep going. And I had someone on the show that says something interesting about is part of it, learning and education, being around like-minded people. But the most powerful thing an individual can do is keep going and never quit. Because if you don't quit, that means you're suggesting that there's something left for you to learn. Most of the time, if someone quits, it's game over. You basically said what you said. I'm done. Yeah. But the most powerful thing anyone can do is never quit or give up. And I think that's part of your book, Live Your Purpose, because live your purpose, you're doing something, you're living, but you're living with your purpose. So if you could touch on that.
Yeah. So there's two books that I'm thinking of when you said that comment. One is Viktor Frankl's book, and I quote that quite a bit in mine because it was quite influential for me as well. He's the survivor from Auschwitz and the concentration camps of World War II, the Polish Jew, and he was a psychologist, psychiatrist, and he was a lecturer. And he talked about, well, why did people would smoke their last cigarette and die? Because they had given up hope. And he talked about how do you develop hope in those kind of extreme trials and circumstances. And most of us won't have that bad, but there is some bloody, terrible things that happen to us that are not necessarily our fault. But here's Viktor Frankl in the worst of human conditions, deprived of everything, of food, of love, of warmth, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And how he survived is he found meaning, he found purpose. And for him, it was two things. The thought of getting home and hugging his wife. And two, and he saw a very clear picture of a warm, well-lit lecture theater where he's teaching this power of meaning and survival through meaning and purpose and through this experience. So he saw himself while he was in the middle of that. He had this vision of something to live for, something to work towards, something to, and so he was a huge counselor for people in there to try to help them. But he credits that and had a great career after the war, and very powerful example because it's in the most extreme of circumstances. And most of us won't face that extreme, but power of having meaning in your life and living for something, even if it's small. And to your point, to keep moving. The other thought that I had while you were talking about happiness is, and I love all the books. There's so many great books on it right now. But my fascination with it is rich and happy, successful and happy. How do you do both? Because as I mentioned, you find a lot of people that are unhappy that have a lot of money, and people think, well, being successful and having power or title is going to make, no, not necessarily. So how do you do both? And so I did a little, after reading some of these books, while I was researching for my own book, I did a little 1,500 person survey on a survey tool online. And it was people in the UK, Australia, Canada, and the US. It was only 1,500 people, but I asked questions around purpose and meaning and happiness and success and habits and all these things. And one of the most insightful things that came out of it was when I cross-correlated the people that said they were successful to also on the higher bands of happiness. This is their own accounting, right? Of whatever they seem as successful and whatever they seem as happiness. When I cross-correlated their habits, there was three high correlating. It was only 1,500 people, but I think when I say these, it'll make sense, intuitive sense that these are right, not just only on this research. But they had three habits, not necessarily in this order, because they were all kind of three very similar. And this is noted in my book as well. But first one was exercise. They and it might not have been high intense endurance events like I love. It might have been just walking every day, but every day they had regular exercise. That was number one. Number two, they had a daily plan. They had meaning. They had purpose. They had a plan for the day. There was something to do. It might have been a retiree that went to the grocery store or went and visited with their grandkid. It doesn't matter if it's something, you're a captain of industry or you're a retiree. If you have a plan for the day. And the third habit or characteristics of these most happy people was they were in daily or regular service to somebody else. And that could have been their kids. It could have been their community. It could have been their church. It could have been whatever. But they were in daily service or giving of themselves to somebody else. And so I thought that was very insightful. And if you want a little mini recipe for success in life to be rich and happy, regular exercise, regular daily planning, and regular service or in service of somebody else is a beautiful place to start to find success and happiness.
There are some words John F. Kennedy said, and he said, efforts and courage are not enough without purpose and direction. And
wow, I didn't know that one. That's amazing. That's a great one.
Yeah, I think that ties with everything that we're discussing, because we live in a phase where a lot of people, I can't say everybody, but disclaimer, a lot of people want to be successful, but I don't think they know why. I think a lot of people want to be,
sometimes.
or how too.
Yeah.
Because I think some people, they think of success by what they see in other people, but not necessarily in the why and in the purpose of other people. And the weight of success, someone told me, is very heavy. So the bigger the dream, the bigger your commitment must be. But without the purpose, like John F. Kennedy, it doesn't have any meaning. There's the efforts and the courage is just empty, because if there's no purpose driving you, then you're almost driving in circles. You're not necessarily making anything meaningful that you can look back on and say, wow, that really helped people.
Yeah, let me just add two pieces of advice for people that are in that discouraged spot. They have big dreams, and like you were saying, not to give up, keep moving forward. So two thoughts for them. One, small things or small steps, and two, Nelson Mandela. Let me start with Nelson Mandela first. President of South Africa, liberated South Africa into a democracy, in prison 28 years, 27, somewhere like that, in Robben Island in the bottom of Cape Town. And I lived in Cape Town for 2 years. My mother's from there. I love South Africa, and I love what Nelson Mandela did. But he had a great quote. And remember, this is the guy that was in prison for 20-something years, right? Incarcerated in the worst kind of scenarios. He says, I never lose. What? How can you say that? I mean, you're in prison for 27, 28 years. I never lose. I either win or learn. Can you imagine if we all adopted that mindset? Yeah. It's not failing. It's not stopping. It's not giving up. It's not, I'm either learning or I'm winning. There's no failure. There's no stopping. I'm learning from this. And, that's why in my planner, I have that page on the opposite of plan of the day, gratitude and learnings. What am I learning? How can I learn faster? What am I learning? What do I need to do differently from that? In his case, it was, he decided to forgive and befriend the very people that incarcerated him. Befriend them, learn their language in prison. And then we know that, the terrific act of humility and love and charity that he tried to do to all South African people of all colors and races, where he could have been extremely bitter, extremely angry, and extremely vengeful. But I never lose. I either win or learn. I love that one. The second one I wanted to give your listeners that might be discouraged, that have big hopes and dreams in their lives and it hasn't worked yet, is small steps. Dr. Bob Maher wrote a book. It's really just called Small Steps, the Kaizen Way, Continuous Improvement, the Kaizen Way. And he tells a story, and I cite this in my book as well, about goals. Sometimes when we have big goals and dreams, it freaks out our brain. It freezes our brain. Fear comes in, and we actually stop and self-sabotage some of our big dreams and goals. And so a way around that is small steps. And so Bob cites an example. He was a teaching doctor I think it was in Washington State. And he was, training residents, and they'd go in and talk to patients, and patient after patient with bad symptoms of anxiety, heart, weight, busy and stressed. And constantly they'd be telling them, you need to exercise, you need to do this, you need to do that. And they'd come back 2 months later and nothing's changed except their stress has increased. So one time Bob with the resident he thought he'd try a little experiment and based on small steps and this idea of starting small, not freaking out the brain. He said, and it was a lady, a single mother with 2 kids, had to raise them on their own, have a job, take care of the, just, you can imagine single parents. That's one of the most difficult jobs in the world. And she had weight issues, she had heart issues, she had blood pressure issues, she had stress issues. So Dr. Bob says to her, okay, do you watch TV at night to de-stress after the girls go to bed? I'm like, yeah, I do. What's your favorite show? She says her favorite show. Okay. During that favorite show, do you think you could just stand up and do either running in place or jumping jacks for 2 commercial breaks? Do you think you could do that? Oh yeah, I could do that. Okay. Promise? Make a commitment to it? Come back in 2 weeks? Yep. So she, during a couple of commercial breaks, and by the way, on her own, during her TV watching, always during commercial breaks, she started doing jumping jacks, walking in place, running in place, whatever. Returned back to the doctors and no weight loss and not much change in her health yet, but started this little habit. And so Dr. Bob says, how did it feel? Oh, I felt great. It gave me some confidence. I didn't, it's just something small, but I did it. And then Dr. Bob says, well, how can you increase it anymore? What makes sense to your brain, to your thoughts? How could you do? Well, what if I do 20 minutes of walking with the girls at night, or instead of watching one show, I'll go for a 30-minute walk. You see where this is going, right? And pretty soon she's a runner, and pretty soon she's lost her weight, and pretty soon her blood pressure is down, and pretty soon and it's this huge success story in her life. It changed her health and the trajectory of her life by small steps. And so that might be, if you're frozen or procrastinating or discouraged, just start small. What is the next small step you could do? Is it investigate, research, or maybe it's in your business and you're nervous about a big investment you need to make, in your gut you need to make on marketing or whatever it might be. But you're nervous. Okay, well, what is the next? Well, I could call somebody else that's used the product before and see if it's good. I could investigate more fully. I could, if it's workout, I could put my workout clothes out right where I'm going to see them first thing in the morning. That's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to do that. Or if you're going to build it, I'm just going to get on my workout clothes at 7 a.m. and walk out the door. That's my only commitment. I'm not committing to 2 miles running or anything. I'm just committing to go to the gate, the end of my property with my workout gear at 7:10. That's sure enough, you do that enough times, you realize, well, I'm out here. I might as well go walking, or I might as well run a mile, or I might as well run a half mile and walk a half mile. And pretty soon you're building your capacity too. I'm an endurance athlete. I love lots of marathons, half marathons, and biking. And when I started as a 35-year-old, I couldn't run a mile. And it all started with small steps. You got to start with a half a mile, and then it didn't feel very good. And then you slowly work up. Each Saturday you add 10%. And pretty soon, many weeks later, you're running 26 miles and you're wondering, what? I thought I couldn't do that. So anyhow, my point is small steps can often help you just keep moving those feet forward. One, I'm at Kilimanjaro. I'm a marathon runner. I'm with 2 of my kids and Cheryl and I, and we're about to peak Kili. And I don't think I'm going to make it at 19,300 feet in the middle of the night. I'm exhausted. I can hardly put one foot in front of the other. And what does my guide say? Mr. Rick, I want you to come right behind me. Can't see anything because it's pitch dark and you're ascending straight up this mountain. So I want you to come right behind me, look at my heels, and I just want you to take one small step after another. That's all I want you to think about. One small, following exactly how my cadence, small step, right step, left step, right step. 20 minutes later, we're on the top of Kilimanjaro at 13,361 feet, freezing our hair off and our clothes, and we've accomplished the goal. So, point being, small steps. Break everything down into small incremental steps, and that eventually leads to large, massive wins in your life as you practice those small steps day after day. And those are called habits, right? Build small positive habits in your life that are going to lead you to massive results and success in your life. But it all starts with identifying the small steps.
Man, that's right. And I don't always say this, but I say this every now and then. Our life is like a blank canvas, and our gift is to paint, and our actions is our mark on history. And at the end of that life is your masterpiece. So right. We can't get a masterpiece with one stroke of the paintbrush. I mean, if only if it was that easy. But that wouldn't be a life worth watching and learning from. And anything I took away from this topic about your book, Live Your Purpose, a step-by-step guide on how to live your best life. Your best life comes from your experience, and your experience is what you decide to do. And someone told me, you have the power to make the choice.
Yep.
And if we can only start choosing, like you're saying, to do the small things, and then that will be the switch that will lead us to the bigger things. It reminds me of a quote from Will Smith where he was talking about, I'm going to paraphrase it, but he talked about, it's not about building the greatest and biggest wall. It's about laying down the brick as best as you can. The best way you can lay that brick down, and do that every day. And before you know it, you will have the great wall. And I think that's how we choose to live our life. We either improve or we just decrease. And I think that's what people are hungry for. They're hungry to improve. So people like you who are on the show to share your experience, because you have your personal story within your book, Live Your Purpose. Someone right now listening what we're saying, of course we want them to get the book, but we hear that on every show, right? Go get the book on the website.
Yeah.
Do something different. What we say to someone right now who is ready to make that switch, make that change, stop the excuses, stop the giving up. And you know what can I start doing right this moment to change the direction of my life?
Yeah, and one simple step, and I do have a free guide on my website on www.ci4, the number ci4life.org, is how to develop your purpose or your vision for your life. But it really starts with two basic questions. You could do that right now on a blank piece of paper. What are my strengths that I want to bring and share with the world? And why? And two, I'm at my funeral. What I want people to be saying, describing my life. Toughest, richest son of a gun, held me accountable every day, or loving, creative, giver, blessed my life. What do you want them to be saying? And when you look at the answers to those two questions, it doesn't have to be a cool little motto or anything, but write it down in, 5 to 50 words. And that's your vision. That's who you want to be. And then the next step is to identify, and that's why I do 90-day goals. A year goals don't work. I mean, we look at the research. Google, how many percentage of people accomplish their goals or their New Year's resolution? It's like under 20%. So if you want to change that, then set some small 90-day goals, not 180, not a year. We forget about it. It doesn't count. Set some 90-day goals, then identify the next step actions, small steps, put it into a weekly plan, a daily plan, and let's start executing on those. And even if you're 45 years old, 55 years old, my father is 87 years old. He just rewrote his purpose statement. My wife, his mother, his wife has Alzheimer's, is in the care unit. And so now he's alone. He's 87 years old. She's struggling. He's struggling. He rewrites his purpose statement during COVID. And he got so much juice from it. Okay, I need to proactively go out there. I love creativity, making a difference, serving, mentoring. I'm in the middle of COVID. My wife's gone. I'm lonely. What do I do? Well, one of my 90-day goals underneath that purpose is to reach out to 5 people, grandkids and or people in my neighborhood, a week to bless their life, either through mentoring or baking them a loaf of bread or whatever. he sets his goal to serve 5 people or connect with 5 people. And he loves to connect. He loves to mentor. And he gets so much joy and juice out of it in the middle of probably this hardest trial of his life. Lonely, his wife's struggling, and he starts to find some purpose and joy again. And the struggle didn't go away, but he added some joy and purpose to his life. And that's the power of articulating who you want to be and then proactively setting out a plan to start that. Whether you're 87, 45, 25, doesn't matter. You can do this at any point, but make sure and break it down into small steps after on your vision so that you can start executing on it. Anyhow, those are my thoughts. Hope that's helpful and useful to your listeners, and really appreciative to be on your show today.
Man, it's good having you on. Once again, talking to our special guest for today, Rick Heyland. You can get his book, I was going to give you a planner real quick, but you get the planner real quick, Live Your Best Life Planner. It's a hardcover. You can get that, and I would recommend you get that. Also, the Live Your Purpose, step-by-step guide on how to live your best life. I think this was, a perfect timing subject to talk about, especially people out there who are hungry to strive and go to the next level in their life, because there's so many cliches out there and there's no knock to it. It's just that it's true. Like, a lot of people are trying to give advice out there, but sometimes you need a little bit more deeper than that. You need someone to tell their story of how they actually did it, how they overcame the dark times and use that as motivation to accomplish the things that they wanted to accomplish. So I want to say thank you to you, Rick Heyland, for being on the show. People can go to your website, ciforlife.org. Again, true honor having you on the show. Thank you for your time.
Shemaiah, thank you so much. Thanks for what you're doing. All the best.